Let's get started. So, welcome to our first of two uh, seminars that I'm going to do on additions. And my name, many of you guys know, my name is Yuri Lyanovich, and I teach at Bob Jones University in Greenville, South Carolina. And I'm a professional cellist, and I like to think of myself as a cellist, but I do wear lots of hats. And one of the things that I really love to do is typesetting. It's been kind of a passion of mine since I was 16 years old, maybe even earlier, since I got Finale 97. Maybe some of you haven't even been alive in 97, so maybe some of you have had kids already by 97. So we've all been in different walks of life at that time, and my walk of life was getting my first copy of Finale. And I'm currently using Sibelius. You know, uh, things changed, and I've jumped ship, and I really enjoy Sibelius now. But it's just a passion of mine. I really love doing it, and so uh, I want to make sure everyone's got the PDFs that I sent, the Google Drive, a link in the chat. They'll make my life a ton easier if you can download that. It's a pretty small file, and it has about 9 pages of music and written material. So let me know if you don't see the chat, don't see the link in the chat, or if you can't download it. I'll try something else. This is my first time hosting a Zoom, so just want to make sure everything runs smoothly. All right, so let's get our feet wet here. So how do I choose a piece for an edition? I have a few criteria. One of my top criteria is something that I'm interested in performing or teaching. I have a couple of students here in the chat with us, so they've played off of my editions before. Um, so that's one of the ways I choose. So let's say I have a performance of like this year I played CPE Bach A major. I pretty much typeset the whole thing, made the string parts, great page turns, beautiful layout. I had two manuscripts at my disposal and some old word text editions. So that's one of the ways I choose. Um, Sometimes I'm not looking to sell editions, but I will make one just for myself, and that's been the case for sonatas like Debussy or Franck. I don't think I'm selling either one. Maybe I'm selling Franck. I don't remember, but for sure I'm not selling the Debussy. And I just wanted a clean copy, something that I would like to look at. I love the Henley. It's a great edition. I love looking at it, but I just wanted to make my own. Nothing against Henley. My pianist used Henley, and it was great. Great typesetting. Love their fonts. Love the layout. Also, I've looked into Baron. I'm not a huge fan of their typesetting, but I just wanted to have my own for that. Um, and then another criteria is something that I've seen requested in person or online. And uh, one of the big instigators for some of my latest projects has been Carlos. I don't know if he's going to join us today, or maybe he's here already. So I I hear what people want, and I want to make a good addition for them. Um, I usually don't charge for those because then my students can use something like Rachmaninoff. If you want me to typeset something like Dalabaco or some like off the wall piece, that would be kind of like a commission. But if I know my students can use it or I can use it in the future, I usually won't charge for that. Plus, I'll learn a ton from the whole research process. Then another criteria is something that might have a scholarly edition already, but I just want to have my own. That's kind of the case with Debussy and Franck. I don't remember any other ones off the top of my head. But I've done other ones that already had a scholarly edition, but I just wanted to have my own just to add competition. Like I think for something like Dvorak Cello Concerto, it gets a little bit ridiculous how many editions there are already. Or for Bach suites, it's just like ridiculous how many there are. And I did jump on the wagon for the Bach and created my own. But I used a different manuscript than what's usually used. So I used the Kellner manuscript. So I realized there's lots of great Bach editions, and everyone wants a different thing from their Bach. So I made one for myself. I learned a ton. I looked at all the 5 sources, looked through Henley, which I used before. Bärenreiter was kind of my war horse back in conservatory. So that's another criteria. And another really cool thing that I love doing is another criteria is pieces that might not have seen the light of day. For example, last year I created an edition of Jerzy Fidelberg's Solo Cello Sonata. I don't know if you guys know of Jerzy Fidelberg or any of his works. But he was a Polish composer, and he came to the United States, got his citizenship in the late 1930s, composed for films. His father was a conductor. He wrote this sonata for Piatigorsky, I believe, and he actually wrote a concerto in the 1930s for Piatigorsky, and I haven't found any recordings of it. So that was a really fun project because I realized that in the United States, the copyright was never renewed on the Fidelberg Sonata, which was good news for me. Since it was composed in 1945, that falls into that, I think, 40-year window where if it wasn't renewed, then it's in public domain in the United States. So I created my own critical edition. I was in touch with New York Public Library, with the Piatigorsky Archive at Colburn. I got lots of great information. I found out that it was actually premiered by Stéphane Aubert, who was the principal cellist of the Pittsburgh Symphony. So I got a copy of Stéphane Aubert's fingerings, and I had a Piatigorsky edition of it and a manuscript. So I had a few sources to work on. So I would encourage you guys to look into that. I actually recorded it. It's on my website, and I had a little blog about it. So I think you guys will enjoy it. It's I don't want to compare it to anything, but it sounds like if Stravinsky wrote like a neoclassical solo cello sonata that lasts about 20 minutes. Okay, so those are my criteria of how I choose what edition I would like to make. Then finding the sources, our favorite is check on IMSLP. It's a great resource. The reason why I love it is because you can find basically anything there, good or bad. But if you're looking carefully, there are scans of authentic manuscripts and first and second editions in high res. Sometimes they're low res, but I find that things, for example, like Tchaikovsky's works, where they're connected to a museum, or some libraries in Germany or Italy, France, like BNF, those will be high resolution scans of first editions and of manuscripts, and I'm happy to get them there. I'm happy to see that there are actual links that I can click to go to like the BNF site or a Belgian or Library of Congress, wherever they have links, so I can look at the original scans. And so those are those are great resources. So don't discount IMSLP just because you see a Brahms sonata that's it says first edition and you see a bunch of mistakes in it. That's fine. I'll talk about some of that right now in this session. But I think those are great resources, and Baronwriter doesn't discount those. They look at the first edition. Sometimes they even base. They make their primary source the first edition. I believe they did that for Brahms E minor. So the next way I find resources is I try to find catalogs made by prominent researchers of the composer. For example, the Tchaikovsky Handbook by Brett Langston and Alexander Poznansky, or the Saint-Saëns Thematic Catalog by Sabina Teller-Ratner. Those are just examples. Those are really fat catalogs. They're like this thick, and there's usually 2 volumes. One volume probably has a thematic catalog, and another volume has like letters, whatever else, so like maybe concert programs, photographs. So those can get pretty expensive. So I usually get in touch with libraries and do an interlibrary loan for that, because I don't want to spend $700 on a catalog that I'm going to use basically once and probably never look at again. So maybe I'll ask our university library to purchase it, let them flip the bill, and then that the catalog is probably going to live at my house whenever I need to research. So, and the final way, and this is actually one of my favorite ways to get in touch with libraries and museums. I find that most libraries are more than willing to work with you, whether they want you to pay or not. I don't know if you've seen or met or somehow got in touch with Stacy Krim. She's pretty active on the Cello Society on Facebook, and she's bent over backwards scanning things for me, and that's actually how I found the Fiddleberg, through her. And so she's super friendly, and she'll work with you. And if you find anything in their cello archives, she'll be happy to scan that. Of course, if you ask her to scan like 400 pages, she's probably not going to do that. But if it's a short piece, like I would say up to 50 pages, she would do no problem. So I've been in touch with BNF. That's the National Library of France. I don't want to butcher French. My French pronunciation is not the best. So I've been in touch with them. I've been in touch with Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. Of course, the archives, the Pyatigorski Archive, the University of North Carolina Greensboro Archive. Those are all great resources, and I find that a lot of those people are super friendly and want to work with you and help you out. So I mentioned the BNF is where I would find something like Fauré, Saint-Saëns. Lots of his music is over there, and it's already digitized, a lot of it. And also Library of Congress for Bloch, or if you're researching American composers like Stravinsky or Rachmaninoff, things that he wrote in the United States, or Copland, Library of Congress is the way to go. So as I said, some things cost money, and the sales of my editions kind of, I don't make any profit on them really. They kind of help me break even with my research. So, but I really love the research, and I kind of live to research. I don't think I could live a day without looking something up, whether it's musical or cooking or language. Love all those things. And so, like I said, some archives are willing to go the extra mile and provide things like correspondences, for example, or concert programs. One instance, when I was researching Fiddleberg, Carol at the Colburn School of Music at the Pyatigorski Archives, actually asked me to translate something for her from Russian. and I was happy to do that. Sometimes you can get a bartering system, like uh, uh, you might you might know a language that someone else might have a stack of. When I was researching Yemnitz, most of his things were written in German and Hungarian. Those are languages that I have no clue how to even decipher, especially Hungarian. So I asked a friend to help me out with that research, and she did a huge, amazing job for that. But sometimes those archives are actually doing research of their own, and they want to know what their letters, their correspondences, maybe signatures say. And if you know the language, you can kind of barter with them and say, hey, if you cut back on the price, I'll translate some things. Just say it nicely. Don't make it look like you're going to work for translations or make them work for translations, because they also need to subsidize somehow. And I really appreciate the willingness to help. So, moving on to considering the sources, and I want to stress that not all sources are of equal importance. Sometimes it gets really crazy, like I keep on bringing up the Dvorak Cello Concerto. The sources there are just insane, so I'll stay away from that. I'll let Jonathan Delmar take care of it, or her, I forget who. I think Annette Opperman is working right now on the Henley Dvorak Cello Concerto, and Klaus Döge did the Breikhoff Ortex like 20 years ago. So I'll let them take care of the Dvorak. Of course, I'll get a little piece of the Dvorak, but I don't want to get into the mud of that. So I'm just saying that there's a lot of debate on what is an important source there for Dvorak, but not all sources are of equal importance, and the more sources you have, the more contextual variants, the more textual variants you'll have. So different readings. So you'll have things like copyist errors. Um, if I'm working with Sibelius and I want to copy out the cello part, there's this thing called dynamic parts. So Sibelius actually creates a part that looks identical to my score part. So I can trust that that will have all the information that I need in it. But if we move back like 50 years when things needed to be typeset separately, I even remember the time when Finale 97, there were no dynamic parts. I had to extract parts and fix them up. And if I needed to add something in a part, then I had to add it in a part and a score and whatever other things that I was working with. So that was a big pain. So I love the dynamic parts in Sibelius, Finale, Dorico. Those are great. But we need to remember that things used to be copied out by hand. That things were handcrafted, like with plates, with movable type. So we'll find copyist errors in that way. Or, for example, you'll get a composer's new idea or a legitimate alternative reading. I don't know how many of you guys have seen, Dvorak Cello Concerto, the Osias, right? You've seen the Osias, if you have the international edition, which those are Osias are actually by Dvorak. Or the Osias in the Simrock, the original Simrock edition, or the reprints. Those Osias are by Dvorak, and maybe he thought that those passages were too difficult, so he wrote some easier ways to play it. I have yet to see someone actually do that, but they do exist. So you might have a new idea or an alternative reading that appears in like a separate part, for example. Then I'd like to kind of stress this. I know there has been a lot of heat about misprints and all of that, and I agree there are misprints sometimes, but often what we see in first editions is an accurate representation of what the publisher was given in manuscript form, meaning that let's say me as a composer, I give a manuscript to the publisher, they're going to typeset it basically exactly as I give it to them. And if I want to change something, I'll do that in a proof. And so I'd like to actually look at our first few examples in your PDF, just so you can see what happens. This is not exhaustive by any means, but I wanted to make it kind of a Reader's Digest. So if you can open a page that looks like this, I believe it's the first page. Perfect. That's the first page of your PDF. So this is looking at two measures of the prelude from Saint-Saëns Suite Opus 16, which I should say that Suite Opus 16 is such an amazing work. Saint-Saëns originally wrote it when he was 27, and then he orchestrated it when he was 84. It's pretty insane what he could do still at 84 years old. So the top line that you'll see is Saint-Saëns' holograph manuscript of the orchestral score. And I don't know if you notice any differences, but if we look at the first measure and look at the Hamé score, or Amé, I'm not sure how you say it, Amé, the score, the printed score, you'll see that the source of that Amé score was this holograph. If you look the second set of 16th notes, you have A, B flat, C natural, E flat, right? And that's an exact representation in the Amé score. But if you look at the third line, that's from the Piano Reduction first edition, and you'll see that in the second set of 16th notes, you'll see that it's an A, B natural, C natural, E flat. So it's a B natural in that set. And underneath in the fourth line, you'll see the piano version from when he was 27 years old. And it has those identical notes. And if you look at the second set, the fourth set, and then the next measure, the second set, you'll see this pattern emerging that's different than the holograph manuscript from 1919. And so if you're just looking at the score, you're like, I don't know which one to choose. They both sound fine. I don't think that one note or two notes per measure is going to make a huge difference. Like, the musical idea is not going to get lost because of the three-note difference. But it's really interesting to note that this piece was never actually published with parts. The score was published in 1919, but up until last year, when I made my own critical edition, it was actually only available through rental for like an arm and a leg, like $500. But it's a public domain piece in the entire world, so there's no reason why there should not be an affordable edition, right? So looking into this suite, I found out that Saint-Saëns basically just orchestrated the prelude and the serenade and didn't change much in terms of the cello part, and kind of told the publisher to reprint those first two movements. So what you'll see in those first two movements in the piano reduction, the Amé piano reduction from 1919, is those first two movements are basically identical to the, I don't want to butcher the French, but the Maho, MAHO edition from 1860s. So that's the reason why we see the cello parts in the piano reduction and the in the piano score of the piano version being identical, but then the holograph, which Saint Saëns actually wrote out by hand in 1919, having different notes, and the score having those notes. Let's look a couple more examples. So if you look at the second page, that prelude is such an awesome piece. It reminds me of Aquarium from Carnival of the Animals. So if we looked at the third set of the 16th notes, so the third set of 16th notes, you have E flat on top, E flat, F natural, E flat, D, and we have the same deal here. It's the score, the holograph has those notes, and so those notes made it into the first edition of the score. But the cello part from the piano reduction has an E flat, F flat. Does it make a difference? I mean, if you're learning it, you want to make sure that you're playing the right note. But I'm not going to sit there listening and seeing, hey, why'd you play an F flat? Like, I feel like I used to do that for Dvorak a ton. Like there's that G sharp in the recap that's that most people play a G natural, and I used to be like, man, that recording is bogus because he didn't play a G sharp or she didn't play a G sharp. So I'm not gonna judge you based on what you play, but these are editorial decisions that we have to make. And then finally, this is a little bit different. This is from the Romance movement.
Hey,
And
Barry, I have a question.
yes.
I think people are having trouble getting the PDF. Perhaps the link in the chat that you provided is not like shareable or something.
Oh,
Sorry to cut you off. Yeah.
oh, sorry. Do you guys see a link that says drive.google.com?
Yeah, it's there, but when you click on it, it says you need permissions.
Okay,
So
cool. Let me check if I. Oh yeah. Let me grant a bunch of permissions. Sorry, guys. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. Okay, sharing. Send. All right. So Sam, did you get yours?
yeah, it was weird. I clicked on it and then I refreshed the page on accident, and then it was gone. So let's see if it works now.
Okay, cool.
Okay, now it should work. I think you might
Okay,
want to resend
perfect.
the link. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and then Gustavo Martin. I shared that with you and Sam. Okay. If I see any more requests, just let me know in the chat if you need a request, and I'll kind of keep my eye out on my Gmail. Cool. So on the third page of the PDF, you'll see this flute and oboe part in the score. So on the top, it's the holograph. It's the same manuscript that was on the top in the other versions, and then you have the Ame edition on top. And if you look at the flute part, you'll see that flute one notes 2 and 3 are tied. They're both B naturals, and that's the way it appears in the score. But then, if you look at the 1919 holograph of the piano part, you'll see that the equivalent of the flute one, which is the alto voice, you'll see that it's actually a C sharp, the third note. And so when I was typesetting, I was like, hey, that sounds kind of weird. And you'll see that the first edition of the piano reduction is it also has a C sharp in it. Vicky, I am sharing with you now. Okay, great. I just shared that link with you. Okay, and Nicholas, you can't. Did you click on it, and did you ask for permission?
Yes, yes, it's the same.
Okay, I didn't see your name here. Let me see if it went to spam. Okay, some of these went to spam. Thank you. I'll just continue talking. So that's also Insane Sound's hand. And so which one do you choose? Uh, well, to my ear, I'm kind of used to the B, and it sounds like the the B chord. Nicholas, did you get yours? Okay. All right. Uh, it's Insane Sound's hand, and so which one do I choose? So I'm used to the B already. I know that's kind of I'm biased, but in that case, I went back to the original version, which already also has a B in it, and there's actually a horn and orchestra version of this piece, which both the manuscript to the horn and orchestra version and the horn and piano version has a B. So I just took the majority rule for that. Sometimes that's not the best way to go. For example, in Bach, there are 3 manuscripts that have an odd F sharp uh, in an odd F sharp in the courant of the 6th suite, and it just doesn't sound good. I think it's an F sharp, um, and you don't want to take a majority in that. I'm pretty sure it's an E pedal that goes over like 3 measures, and the Kellner edition has the right note. So you don't want to take the majority rule for that, but in this case, the majority seemed to make the most sense. All right, so moving on. Any questions before we move on? Any questions about those 3 that we looked at? It's cool to see Saint Sound's own handwriting, right? I actually posted the 2 concertos on IMSLP, his holographs. So if you want to look at the first or the second concerto, those are B and F. Uh, what are they called? Scans, high quality scans. Okay, so then moving on. Uh, so if there's missing information from the edition that you feel like is missing, or there's extra information, it was probably either missing or extra on the editions or the manuscripts, the holographs that uh, the, the publisher received. Then something final from this section is I want to make sure that you guys understand that if anything else comes up, like any other sources, I need to switch my gears pretty quickly. So, for example, you'll have the Bärenreiter edition or Henley putting out Beethoven violin sonatas or cello sonatas. They print a ton of those, and they can't really shift gears too quickly because let's say they print like 5,000 copies. They can't go back and pencil in the correct thing. I think the fair thing to do is for them to send out an errata page saying where they messed up. I think that would be the most fair thing to do. But I don't think I've ever seen anything like that from those two publishers. But imagine for them to reprint something, they have to pull out everything that they've already printed out of print and put a new stream uh, of music out, which you can't catch everything. So, for example, Beethoven violin sonatas were just republished by Baron Reiter, I think, last month. And so, does that mean that everything else that they printed from the violin sonatas by Beethoven is that null and void? I don't know. Maybe those are still fair additions to use. Maybe you want to find out what they changed and then pencil it into your old edition. So, what's really great with running a digital business is that if you tell me I have a wrong note, then I'll fix it pretty quickly and I'll post a new version of it, and you can actually download a brand new version from Sheet Music Plus without any charge. And that's happened before. Okay, so how do I start the editing process? So what's my starting point? Since I know the cello part the best, I know most of you guys are cellists, so you'll appreciate it. Since I know the cello part best, in most cases I start by comparing the separate published cello part with the piano score. And if I'm researching a concerto, then I look at the cello part of the first edition, and I enter all the alternate readings into the cello part, which seems to be like the cleanest way for me to do it. But if you have another way of doing it, that's great. Whatever works for you. We're all different. We're built differently, and I think there's lots of great ways to start an editorial process. So then when I publish a score or a part, I consider how many annotations I need to make. If the annotations are few, I'll keep them in the footnotes. You'll see that lengthy kind of footnote in the Saint-Saëns score from the Gavotte. It's in the PDF. Speaking of PDFs, let me see if there's, okay, one more. Sending one out to Susan. Okay, so if you look, I believe it's page 4 of the Gavotte, the Saint-Saëns Gavotte. On the bottom of the page, you'll see my lengthy discussion why I believe that that's a C sharp and not a D natural. So I'll if there are few notes I need to take, then I usually keep them in the score and or in the part whatever I'm publishing in that main in the main publication. I'll keep them down in the footnotes. And if there's a long list like Shlomo, Sam and I were talking about Shlomo before we started, and the Shlomo has a ton of a ton of information. So you'll see on page 5, I believe, of your PDF, you'll see my 2-page critical commentary about Shlomo. So I talk about which sources I used and what the main differences between between the sources are, and I use 5 sources, which is a pretty hefty number, at least for me. I know some Bach, like Well-Tempered Clavier, can have a ton of sources, like 10. And I don't know how editors do that, but I'm pretty happy with 5. For the Saint-Saëns, I had maybe 7 or 8. So that gets pretty insane too, because that's a 20-minute piece with a full orchestra. But for Shlomo, I only published the cello solo part, and you can see all the notes, and I actually have them published on my website, my entire critical commentary of all the differences that you'll find in the cello part alone. This is just the cello part. This is not the score, like the flute parts or not the orchestral parts, not the piano score, but the things that you'll find that are different between the cello parts between the five sources. So that was a pretty cool project. I actually, I think it was I did it for Mark. Mark is here. So he was the first one to test out my edition of the Shalomo. And also the next page you'll see is the Schumann Critical Edition. And for that I used three sources, which is a lot more doable because you have to look at every single note of each source to make sure that you're printing the right thing and what kind of decisions you have to make. So I used the autograph, the first edition score, and the first edition piano part. And for Schumann, it wasn't too many. I don't think you'll hear the differences that, unless you really exaggerate them. I don't think you'll hear the differences between the Schumann, let's say the Rose edition. Sorry, Rose International, or the Breitkopf, the old Breitkopf edition, the Klingel. I don't think you'll hear much difference between those and a critical edition. But it's also it's helpful to know what's in there and why the editor took certain steps to make an edition. So I would encourage you to purchase my Schumann, but the critical notes, I mean, you have them, so you don't even need to purchase it. If you don't want to, you can just enter them into your International or Breitkopf or the new Breitkopf, which is also a critical edition. But the reason why I'm not a huge fan of that Breitkopf is because it has fingerings and bowings in it. So I kind of like to start with a bare bones edition when I personally study a piece. So enjoy those. I've never published a Schumann on my website, so you can have the notes free of charge there.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So I mean, with respect to different composers and I guess their entire catalog, I assume like the resources you have available change a bit. And I think like, so I have a question. I'll just take Brahms for as an example. Like, the way Brahms handles slurs is commonly known as very different than the way Schumann handled slurs. So like, when you're going through a piece like Schumann and like you have to have a different hierarchy of the what sources matter more versus others, I would say. So I guess my question is, do you spend a lot of time kind of studying the other, pieces and manuscripts to discern like, how did they generally handle slurs in their catalog of scores? How do they generally handle accenting and whatnot, as a means? Or do you typically just isolate the piece itself with which you're working and only the sources behind that? Do you ever dig into other pieces in their repertory?
Well, this is a kind of it's a really cool question, and actually, I'm going to talk about it more about next week. I'll still answer it right now. So, as a cellist, I'll play how it fits my technique. So, the first three notes of the Schumann Cello Concerto, you cannot make me play those first three notes on one bow. You can't do that. I mean, even at 130. Which is actually Schumann's original tempo was 144, and then Bockmühl was like, no, wait, that's like way too fast. So he was like, can we do this at 96? And Schumann was like, no, let's do it at 130. I'm like, so the 130 is not even an old-time metronome. So I'm glad you bring this up because as a cellist, I rarely follow like Brahms' Second Symphony, second movement. If you talk to any cellists, none of them play that on one bow. Those are phrase markings. But I feel like yes, I do stay within the one piece. If I need more, like if I need to look at the five folkstone pieces, the folk style pieces, or if I need to look at I guess that's all there is really originally for cello. But I could look at the clarinet pieces, the Fantasy-Stücke, see how Schumann handles. I usually don't really do that. I kind of stay within the one piece, but I've played enough Schumann. I feel like I know I don't want to sound like arrogant when I say this, but I feel like I've played enough Schumann, like his chamber music and his symphonic works, to kind of understand how he likes to slur, and where there's where it's a phrase mark. So I don't dig so much in depth where I split hairs where between the punkt and the strich and all the the dot. What does the dot mean? So maybe that doesn't make me a good editor, but I I try to stay away from controversies like, let's say, the punkt and the strich. Um, if Schumann has a strich, I'm going to put a strich. If he got a punkt, if he's got a dot, I'm going to put a dot. I'm talking about the wedges, right? The wedge versus the dot, and so I'll try to represent the score as best as I can in my edition. I don't know if that answers your question, uh, but I don't look at Schumann's, let's say, other chamber works or how he wrote for cello. I mean, I have played the piano quartet. I've studied the piano trio, the first piano trio, and I play his symphonies and other works. So I I feel like that gives me a pretty good sense of how he does it. And most of the things that I do is cello related anyway. So I don't think I would ever dare publishing an oboe or a flute piece, or maybe you can twist my arm into doing violin, but I'll stick to cello for now. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. Great. Okay. So uh, uh, we're almost to the finish, and I'll take some questions after that. Let me see if anyone else is looking for permission. Okay, I think everyone's good. Okay, so once I know the differences between the printed sources, I look at the manuscript. That's one of the things that is not always available to me, is the manuscript. Like the Rachmaninoff cello sonata, that's at the Glinka Museum in Russia, and I might never hear from them about the Rachmaninoff. The BNF is really great about writing back. Belgium is pretty good about writing back. They're really prompt. I think I was in touch with a German library about Haydn's G major violin concerto, because they have a manuscript with Leopold Hoffmann's name on it, and they told me they'd get back to me about a month ago. So they were prompt and responding, but then they told me that they'll get back to me. And I understand the situation right now, so I'm not really pushing to get those pieces out. But sometimes I just need to use the sources that are available, like the first edition, the second edition. For example, I'm working currently on Popper's Invalda. I have no clue where Popper's Invalda manuscripts are, so I'm working from the orchestral score, from the orchestral parts, and the two editions that are available of the piano reduction. So if there is a manuscript, I note all those differences. And I've talked about how I have an overabundance of sources here in the St. Sans. And so sometimes the overabundance of sources, it makes my job easier in a way, because like I know what St. Sans wrote. Like sometimes you're like, what did Dvorak write? Dvorak wrote this and this and like there's so many scores of Dvorak's cello concerto, like in his hand, with textual variants, that you're like, well, Dvorak wrote all of that, so you have to look beyond the score. So The easy job is that you know what Saint-Saëns wrote in this case, or Dvorak in anyone else's case, but more difficult because uh, there might be different plausible textual variants in each source, like I showed in the prelude. Whether it's a B natural or B flat, it's not really going to change the meaning of the piece. At the end of the day, the goal of the editor is to make an educated guess. Even the best editors, like Clive Brown or Ann Opperman and Jonathan Delmar, just to name a couple or a few, they're making educated guesses, and I respect their guesses, and I might disagree with what they say, but I know that they put this is their like main job. That's what they do. They research, and I really respect that. I cannot drop everything and sit at a library all day researching. So I'm definitely thankful for all the help that I get from libraries and from colleagues. I actually have colleagues who help me, who kind of look over my scores, to make sure that they look good. So I really appreciate those, and they do it for free for me, and I do it for them. So kind of like Brahms proofread Dvorak's cello concerto when he said, "If I knew a cello concerto could be written like this, I would have written one a long time ago." And it is a sad thing that Brahms doesn't have a cello concerto. He's got the double, but you know, uh, composers and typesetters use each other's services, and I'm glad that I have friends who are willing to help in that. And so consumers of printed scores are the ones that will be the most affected by the editor's choices. And I know that sometimes there's like heat on some of the forums about what note it is or what slur is it in Bach or what's your favorite edition. And uh, as an editor, I'm not trying to start a war, and I hope that Jonathan Delmar and Clive Brown, they're not trying to start a war. They just want a nice edition available to their consumers. And if you guys fight over what's the right note, if it's an open G or if it's a B flat in the Allemande of the Fifth Suite, that weird chord in there in the second half, the G D A flat chord, or is it a B flat D A flat chord? People play it differently. It's not it it's not my intention to start wars. I just want to give you guys the best that I have to offer. And I'd like to talk about typesetting just really quickly. So any edition, not to mention scholarly, needs to be presented clearly and cleanly on the page. Um, just as an example, just like an English teacher can see a rush job in a typed essay, so can a trained eye see a rush job or a novice intermediate job in a score. For me, the gold standard, and I will say this, I am kind of promoting them because they're my favorite publisher. For me, the gold standard is Henley, especially their old Beethoven and Schubert piano sonatas. I don't know if you guys ever looked at those. And the Beethoven's cello sonatas, the Navarra edition, the old one. So I really love those. I love the way they look on the page. They just so pleasing. They're inviting. I really want to study them because they look so great on the page. And so everything must be proportional and well placed. Don't depend on music software defaults. I realized that when the Henley Beethoven sonatas came out, that was before they even used software. But these days, it seems like everyone knows how to use at least the Muse score, and I would not trust the defaults from that. Excuse me. I would always look at each note and fix whatever needs to get fixed. And if the default looks fine, then it looks fine. If the default doesn't look fine, you just need to know what it needs to look like and make it look like that. Kind of like a counterfeit dollar bill. You need to know what it looks like, or you need to know what the original looks like, and then the counterfeit will just pop out at you. So just this is kind of technicalities, but the staff size must be a minimum of 6.8 millimeters, and 6.2 if you're looking to do a tight squeeze 3-pager, just so you can see it. That's kind of the standard. And if you measure, I know this gets like really nitty gritty, but if you measure the Henley, the piano part or the cello part, the separate cello part, you'll see that they're 6.8 millimeters minimum. Anything bigger than 7.0 millimeters, though, begins to look like a Pops part. And I'm sure many of you have played Pops concerts where the staff size is like this big, and you're like, you got like 4 notes per page. You got 4 measures per staff. I don't know. It just like it drives me crazy, but that's not the standards. Over 7.0 millimeters, just that doesn't cut it. It looks like some like Phantom of the Opera or something. Not to hate on it, but just saying it looks more like a Pops chart. And I avoid Times New Roman, Arial, and Calibri fonts. Again, that goes with the whole default. And Times New Roman is so overused, so I try to stay away. My personal favorite is the Garamond family. Love the Garamond. It just looks great. For sans serif, I love Myriad Pro. Those are really great fonts. And so good. And page turns. Page turns are so important. Sometimes you'll get an edition that they didn't think through the page turns, and you have to copy everything, and it just doesn't work. So I start with page turns. For example, I'll just give you a quick example. So I'm playing the St. Sound Suite next week with my wife, and she's playing piano. And she didn't like the page turns in the tarantella movement. So I was like, hey, let me look at this other edition that came out a few years ago by Schott. And it has better page turns, but it has way more wrong notes in it. So I was like, how about I just typeset you a new one with your favorite page turns? Like, we'll just start from scratch, and you'll have your favorite page turns in the tarantella movement. So I worked it out that way. So that's a positive thing that you can, if you can work with Sibelius or Finale or MuseScore or Doric or whatever. If you know what you're doing, and you want to do someone a favor like that, that's plus it helps me out because she's not going to be rushing or doing some kind of project herself, like cutting things out. So page turns matter. Okay, and finally, I'm sure some of you might have done this before, but I really love it. I take pictures of bloopers and famous scholarly editions, especially Bärenreiter. I know I'm picking on them a lot. I know they've done so much great research, and I use their research all the time. I love their critical notes, so I don't think I'm just like hating on Bärenreiter and loving on Henley. But Bärenreiter loves to put down in the back of their editions that they're like the latest state-of-the-art research, like the best that you can get. And I just find it funny when they find wrong notes because they state that they're state of the art and latest, and it's just a personal kind of enjoyment that I get from that. I hope you guys don't think I'm mean because of that. And likewise, if you guys find wrong notes or wrong slurs or wrong punkt or strich or whatever, if you find those things that are wrong or wrong fingerings, or fingerings that don't make sense, most of the time, like 99.9% of the time, I will literally open up my computer, change that, and re-upload it so you guys can enjoy the best and the latest. And I truly apologize for having wrong notes or bad page turns in my past editions. I'll try to rectify those. Okay, and so my like I said, my editions are all digital, and I don't have to wait like 5 to 10 years until everything I've exhausted my entire stock before I reprint something with better notes. So you guys, you can email me, you can Facebook message me, whatever. I'm pretty reachable all the time. So uh, feel free, just be like, man, I don't agree with that B flat. Can you put in that B natural? I'll show you some of the sources and we can talk about it. But if it's truly like that last one with the Bärenreiter with a C sharp and the Brahms F, that's like clearly wrong. None of the sources had the C sharp in it. I mean, I'd be like, oops, that was not what I meant to do. So I'll fix that and put it back up. Okay. Uh, so that's the end of my part. I would love to hear from you guys. Just any questions. Like I said, this is part one of a two-part series. Next week, we'll talk about editions specifically, like Dvorak, Rachmaninoff, Stravinsky, Shostakovich, whatever. I'll have a stack. Like, you can't even see my hand. I have a huge stack of music, and we can look through it. Like, I'll look through it in real time with you guys, and we'll do a little score study. But I'll open up the floor to you guys now. Anything. We got Domen here. Hey, Domen.
Yuri, thank you so much for sharing your information. You're always so helpful on the Facebook page and today, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for being here.
I've got a question for you, Yuri.
Okay.
You have the advantage of having an academic affiliation. Is there a problem with people who are not associated with a university getting access to some of these sources from museums and libraries, for example?
That's a really good question, and I'll tell you guys, I've been researching since I was 13 years old. I used to take my dad down to the Detroit Public Library, and he used to draw circles around the block while I did my thing. And ILL, interlibrary loan, is the way to go when you're just starting. That's the way to go. Yes, I realize that having the academic affiliation now as a professor or as a student at a state university or at a conservatory, the fees were waived for me. I've occasionally had to pay for some of the more rare items out of pocket, but usually those fees are waived for me. But as a 13-year-old, I had to pay out of pocket for every single, or my parents, they had to pay out of pocket for all the research or all the editions that I really wanted to see with the Detroit Public Library or with our local public library. So, yes and no. Like, I do have that kind of like doctor on my name, and when I write an archive, I will say that I'm the cello professor at Bob Jones University. But I think you can equally ask ask an archive, like Carol at the Perigorsky archive or Stacy at the UNCG archive. They're so friendly. Like, you don't need to be a college professor to work with them, and if you need connections, like, they're really great connections, and you can kind of use them as connections to other ones. If you feel like you're not getting a response from an archive or a library or a museum, you can say, hey, I was talking to Stacy or Carol, and don't have to say, hey, I know you guys are friends, but you can say that they recommended that I get in touch with you, and the connection is always good to have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, Yuri. May I have a word with you?
Yeah,
This is Gustavo Martin from Mexico.
mucho
Don't know if
gusto.
you see me. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. First of
Yes.
all, thank you very much for the information you are sharing with us and all the work you are doing. I teach at the University of Mexico, and
Mm-hmm.
actually I have a project working on Mexican music for cello,
Mm-hmm.
and we will have several editions just that we will be presenting pretty soon. I would like to show, if you leave me to share the screen, I could show you something of the work that we are doing, but I am not, I don't know if I'm allowed to do it because you have to give me like permission, no, for that.
I'm not sure how to do it, but let me write you
You
guys
have
down
to
here.
say, you have to give me like the, some, there's something in the part when you where you give like permission for that. I think.
So I'm sharing my email, my personal email address down here. So you, whatever, if you want to send all that information to me, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
And
We will be presenting several pieces for cello and piano from Mexican composers that are not really well known.
mm-hmm.
We have been working with these editions that are critical editions. So I have a group of friends that are working with me, some students, and I think we're trying to do something similar that you are doing. We are trying to do a little different approach just to have good music that are shared. I mean, we all these editions will be for free for
Mm-hmm.
the and I will try to put them on the Facebook and everything of the International Cello Society and everything,
Mm-hmm.
because we got permission from the composers just to share the music. So I think you will be interested in the work that we are doing, and hopefully it will be attractive for the rest of our colleagues that are cellists. But first, I'm waiting just to know more information about your work with the Rachmaninoff and the Shostakovich sonatas.
Mm-hmm.
Please let us know with enough time just to be prepared and to be able to just to listen to your talk, because those I love those sonatas and it's great just to get more information. I have read the stuff uh, you wrote in your blog and everything, but it's good just to get just directly from you the information. No, so hopefully you will be able to to check also my stuff, and we will be talking about that.
Excellent.
Either
Yeah, I
way,
look forward to hearing
congratulations
you.
for your work.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Dr. Leonovich, I have a question.
Yes.
Regarding, you mentioned hearing certain stylistic and note choices that are made by performers that you've either played with or heard. How do you determine what is standard practice if you're listening to something?
Are you talking about the performance aspect of the critical edition?
No, more like I think you mentioned that the tied B natural, that like you had heard it that way and you preferred that. I guess I mean, how do you find like what you prefer orally?
Okay, well, that's a really great question too, because uh, I'm not sure if Sam is still here, if he departed. But that actually kind of ties into what Sam was asking about the slurs, and uh, you start learning what the composer wrote. So if you know enough works of the composer, you'll think, hey, that doesn't sound like Saint-Saëns. Of course, Saint-Saëns can change one note as just one note, right? But that's one way you can kind of decide. Another, for me, this is kind of the deciding factor for me, as knowing music theory and knowing how a composer would resolve a certain chord. So for example, in that case, if you keep the B, you'll get your first chord will be a B augmented chord. So B, D sharp, F double sharp. And if you keep the B, then you'll have an E major chord for the second chord. So a B augmented chord can easily serve as a dominant function. So to my ear, that's a purer resolution. But if it went to a C sharp, then it would be a B augmented chord going to a C sharp minor chord. And we could say that technically it can work out because it would be deceptive cadence. It's very fast, like that. Those notes happen within like 2 seconds. It's like da 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 da. That's it. That's done, right? So, uh, I don't know if that answers your question, but I would use what I've learned, the composer's sound and music theory in tandem.
Yes, that's really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right. Well, it was a real pleasure to talk to everyone here and to see some names put a face to a name. And I hope that we can meet next week at the same time, same place, to talk about editions. And I'll somehow connect on the Cello International Cello Society for you guys to submit what passages and what pieces and what editions you want me to discuss, and feel free to bring your own editions, and we can just chat in real time. I'm hoping that it will be less of a lecture and just more of a interaction. I would love to talk to you guys just one-on-one. I mean, in the seminar setting. So looking forward to that, and thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I know for some of you guys it's like middle of the night, or maybe it's the next day. All right. See ya. Have a great rest of your week.